Welcome to Decide to Transform. You made it to level 2, deeper questions leading to deeper answers. I'm Tomas Garza, and I'm here to help you decide to transform. I'll be setting the pace for the process to support your unfolding. Learn and commit to a practice that brings simplicity and awareness of what is ready to be released. Join me now and allow the experience of a deeper sense of love. Welcome to Decide to Transform. I am delighted that you're joining me today. I'm Tomas Garza, your host, and we've got a very special show in store for you today. My wife Cindy and I have moved, as you may know if you listened to last week's show. We are in Phoenix, Arizona. Last week we were in Mexico, today Arizona, and we've got a very special show in store for you, especially for all of those who may feel like a new chapter in life is on its way. And if you want it to be on its way, this is for you as well. I'd love to say that every show is for everybody, which it is, but if you're especially longing to make some serious changes in your life, then I want to invite you to stick around for the entire show today. We will be talking about beginning a new chapter in your life. The title of the show is The Beginning of Something. It's about seasons in our lives. Last week, we looked at the end of a chapter, and I took you through some of our adventures, our misadventures, and some of the lessons that we have learned over the last 2.5 years. Just a quick recap of everything. What we did was we sold our house. My wife and I sold our house in Oregon at the end of 2017 and committed to leaping into the void, sort of. We sold everything or put it in storage, sold the house, and moved to Mexico to travel and, of course, to work from Mexico. And that's part of the beauty of the 21st century work life for some people. And we had the opportunity to be digital entrepreneurs, and we have been taking advantage of that. We're still doing that. And for 2.5 years, we lived in various parts of Mexico and had a lot of wonderful experiences, met some wonderful people. We've made some lifelong friends, and we've learned a great deal about launching into the unknown, which is something that scares so many people. And we have done it, and even then, I shared with you last week on the show that I was nervous as well. It was nerve-wracking initially for me to leave the comfort, security, and indeed, if I have to say it, and I will, the status of homeownership in the United States behind. I had become attached to my little house and a little community and all of that, but when it's time for a person to grow, it's time for them to grow. We sold that, and we've been traveling. Now we're back in the United States, in Arizona, in a completely different location. So while we talked about the ending of a period of time in our lives last week on the show, the title's The End of Something. That show date is February 25th, and you can listen to that wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, you name it. It's on iHeartRadio, that sort of thing. So go back and give that a listen if you're curious. A lot of the questions that people ask themselves at the end of a period of time, or a season, as I like to call it, in life, a lot of those questions relate also to the beginning of something, to the beginning of a season or a period of time. We'll go through those today on the show. And that's the backdrop. I've given you the brief history of moving to Mexico. By the way, if you're curious, we spent most of our time in the Mexican state of Yucatan, on the Yucatan Peninsula. We spent a lot of time in the capital of the state, the city of Mérida, which is a really wonderful colonial downtown and a beautiful, beautiful place. Very tranquil, low-key vibe. And for about 10 months, we actually rented a house on the beach in Yucatan, about 40 kilometers outside of the city. We lived in the most scenic place that I've frankly ever lived in before. Absolutely wonderful. Our views were absolutely stunning. The sunrises, the sunsets, even in the middle of the day. We were literally about 10 meters away from the beach. Now, that is just as lovely as it sounds. Nice tropical heat, a little bit cooler than in the city, and we had a lot of challenges. So, even in what some people would consider paradise, we had a number of challenges, including internet connection, electricity, low water pressure, all kinds of things. And it's an adventure. We've embraced it, and we're embracing a new adventure. We decided in November of last year to start a new chapter in our lives and come back to the United States and have a base somewhere accessible to our family in Oregon and Mexico itself. Phoenix, Arizona fits the bill for the sunshine, which is something that we value. It's not something that is for everybody, and it is going to be 115 in July. 115 degrees Fahrenheit, 45 and up Celsius. I realize that. And it is what it is. And we have air conditioning. So let's get into some of the questions. There are a couple of listener questions on tap for the show today, and one of them is from a specific listener. The other is a general question. And let's get into that question right away. This is something that a number of people have asked us. They asked us when we moved back in 2017, and we're getting the same question right now. And that is general from a lot of people. What was the tipping point for you all, for my wife and me? What made you finally decide to do it? In other words, to initiate the move. So what was the tipping point? That is a great and frequent question, and one that we've entertained in live conversations with people. We've entertained it on social media, and we've done Facebook Lives and videos about this very thing. I think everybody hits a tipping point. What we do sometimes as human beings is get ourselves into periods of time and seasons that may serve us at the beginning. We have lessons to learn during a period of time, whether this period of time is 1 day or 2 days, or whether it's several years. There are things that we need to learn during the season, and once we've learned the lessons and had the experiences that we're meant to have, it's time for new lessons, for new experiences, and that may entail something like a change of scenery. And we realized probably before 2017 initially that we needed a change of scenery, and the pain of staying the same just became too much. For me personally, that was the tipping point, and I'm referring specifically to the darkness of Western Oregon in the winter. Now, I know a number of you are listening from the Pacific Northwest, and I've lived half my life there. Cindy has lived almost her entire life there. And yes, it's beautiful. Yes, the people are wonderful. And yes, it is dark from October to May. We all know this, and people carry on how they carry on. Personally, I reached a tipping point where I just couldn't do it anymore, and the pain of staying the same was more than the short-term discomfort of selling my house. And the tipping point for us recently in Mexico was the fact that literally Cindy and I could not both work at the same time. Maybe you've had this challenge, and maybe in a country like the United States or Canada, I know some of you are listening from Australia and Europe, where there are quite a bit of modern conveniences like electricity, like reliable internet connections. And it was something very frustrating for us, even in the beauty of the beach and the scenery and the utter tranquility of beach life in Mexico, which is every bit as wonderful as it seems. However, when both partners in a marriage are running online businesses and in build and growth mode, I might add, it can be very, very challenging when you cannot access basic services. We spent a lot of time sharing the bandwidth. And even when we were able to do that, sometimes we were not able to do something as relatively easy as recording a Facebook Live, which is something that we both love to do. As a radio show host, obviously I love to talk. I'm talking for 1 hour, and frankly, I could talk for many hours, especially about this subject. It was so hand-wringing and hair-tearing out, so to speak, and it's not very much fun to have to ration time because you could do twice the work or more. And if you only had the basic services, so that finally drove us out. Also, Arizona has a very wonderful energy to it, and we love the desert and the sunlight. So there's that. So the tipping point was a pain point. And that's what I'm driving at here. That is for me what finally made me personally decide to go along with all of these changes and to want to jump into it. And you may relate to that. Now, this can apply to any facet of life. What we're doing is I'm talking about our travels, frankly, and our way of life, our lifestyle that we've adopted as literally, quite literally, a laptop lifestyle. So when you see people posting on Facebook and social media and Instagram, pictures of them by the pool with a laptop, that is legit and real. And yes, those people could have certainly staged it, right? But more likely, they are in fact working online because it is possible, and what we have done is 100% possible. It's possible if you want to do it, it is possible, and I will get into that later. So the tipping point can be a pain point. And it's a good general question. So I wanted to take a stab at that one first. And before we go on to talking about one of the greatest obstacles toward change in any arena of life, I want to take you through a recap of some of the themes that came up from the last show about the end of a season, because there's significant overlap. You'll find that a lot of the questions that people ask themselves are, in fact, the same during a transitional period. And I would still consider this a transitional period. We are actually in our new house, but we did not get in until Friday. And I'll set the scene for you. I'm in a very large office with a lot of natural light. I can look out and see our pool and the neighbors' palm trees and lots of blue sky here. There's no furniture. We're populating things slowly, but surely, and some of the themes are exactly the same. So let's go through those here. First of all, from last week, regarding the passing of a season and the beginning of a season in any transitional period in life, people want to and need to, well, let me back up. They may not want to, but they most definitely need to let go of what does not serve. And you know what that is for you. You do. Let go of what doesn't serve you. And secondly, get out of your own way. What I mean by that is to trust that the universe or God, or whichever term you wish to use for divinity, a higher power, trust that the universe has your back. that you're going to be okay. You just need to allow it. You need to allow the change that wants to express itself in your life. It's all about allowing. Having patience. Item number 3, definitely correct, because things aren't always going to go the way you want them to go. Life is like that. And I encourage people also to commit to reinventing yourself. And periods of time that cause great change can be frightening for people, but what I encourage people to do is to reinvent yourself and invest in yourself. Making a significant change in your life is, in fact, an investment in yourself, your own personal transformation, and in your development. And lastly, from last week, I absolutely want to encourage people to cultivate curiosity, because life is about curiosity and a sense of gratitude. Cindy and I are very grateful for all of the experiences that we've had, not just in the last 2.5 years or in the last 3 months, but overall in our entire life, including the painful experiences, because we have learned from them. We've learned from them, and we've learned what to do, what not to do, how to handle things, and it's these types of experiences that enable us to grow. So these are 6 items that were relevant to the ending of a season, and they're also relevant to the beginning. Let go of what doesn't serve you. Trust the universe. Trust yourself, capital S. Get out of your own way. 3, have patience. 4, invest in yourself and commit to reinventing yourself. 5, cultivate curiosity. And 6, cultivate a sense of gratitude. That's a very high vibration. It's a place that we all want to and need to be. So, that is something that you can all take. Let's break for a commercial here. When we come back, we'll talk about the fear of change and things you can do to move beyond it. Stay with us right here on Om Times Radio. We'll be right back.
Connecting you with the best of the conscious minds in the world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM.
Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. Om Times, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hi, I'm Tomas Garza, author of Decide and host of Decide to Transform on Om Times Radio. I want to ask you, if you want something in life, have you decided on it? If not, you'll listen to a limiting story about yourself. You will say you can't, you're too old, too young, etc. Decide to transform in life. Learn what you can choose to believe instead of your limiting stories. Decide. Available now in paperback and ebook.
Did you know that you have the power to change anything in your life? Did you know you can do so even with the things that you've already decided are impossible to change? Come join me, Venus Castleberg, on Outside the Impossible as I interview people from around the globe that have literally changed the things they thought were impossible to change just by using the amazing tools of Access Consciousness. Now airing Wednesdays 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Do you dare to believe that anything really is possible?
Opiates has taken everything and everyone I've ever loved away from me. Everything. I blew my ankle out and I got prescribed pain pills by my doctor.
If making my detox public is going to help somebody, I'm all for it. I just wish I would have had a warning.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth. A message from Truth, the Ad Council, and ONDCP.
Welcome back to Decide to Transform. I'm your host, Tomas Garza, and I hope you're enjoying our live broadcast on Om Times Radio. Before the break, we were looking at some things that I invite people to cultivate as far as moving through a transition in life. This applies to the end of a current state of life and also to the beginning of a new state. Last week, we were at the end of a season. This week, we're beginning a new one. And I will tell you the energy is different on a lot of levels. Now, this applies to every single one of us. It applies in the sense of our relationships, in our job. Every bit of life is a transition. And those of you, if you practice Buddhism or you're familiar with Tibetan Buddhism, the word bardo comes up quite a bit. In other words, a gap, a transition between one state of being and the next. This is not necessarily just between one's leaving the physical body, what we call death, and the next lifetime. It's not exactly just that. That is what people think of. But it's also a gap between one moment and the next. Quite literally between one thought and the next, one breath and the next. There's always a transition going on. And the energies that it's helpful for us to cultivate are in fact the same at the end of something and the beginning of something else. There are lots of transitions in life, lots and lots. And what we're talking about is something that shows up in our experience as big and monumental and quite game-changing. In other words, selling your house, moving away for 2.5 years, moving back to a completely different place for a completely different phase of life. So what stops people from doing this? Let's set the scene here. Cindy and I have received countless messages on social media from people thanking us for our pictures and all of the photographs that we've posted. And you're most welcome. We're pleased to share our journey with you. In fact, when I wrote Decide, my book, that is one of the main reasons is I wanted to share my experience. This radio show is a result of the same desire to share my experience with you. So thank you for all of the kind words. What often people have told us is that, well, I'm living vicariously through you. Let's break that one down, shall we? This is something that should make you think. It should make you think. I'm not going to go so far as to say this should trouble you. However, let's think about why people say this. When we take a look at people's pictures on social media, for example, when we see someone posting from the beach or poolside on Facebook and it looks hot, it looks tropical, they may have a tropical drink in their hand with or without those fancy umbrellas and fake pineapples with multiple colors, things like that. They look like they're having fun. They look like they're relaxing. And people are fond of saying, well, I'm living vicariously through you. Well, okay. What is stopping you from doing this yourself? I mean, let's get real here. Let's get real and hardcore. And if you're listening today, ask yourself this question. What is stopping you from doing the same thing that we're doing? This has completely and totally been the result of a conscious choice. It is the result of a decision. It is the result of a decision that we made a few years ago to break the mold. We could have made this decision years earlier and incidentally saved ourselves a lot of gray hair, a lot of stressful nights, even some depression, to be honest. We could have saved ourselves all of that, but we did it when we did it. And my question for you is, if you're considering making significant changes in your life, what's stopping you? What are you afraid of? Because that's what stops all of us, without exception. Every single one of us experiences fear when we think about change. And there are many reasons why that's the case. It's not my goal on this broadcast to go into all of the scientific reasons why, but our entire physical body and system and our brain is designed to keep us the same. Safety, stasis, comfort, something new automatically triggers a response in us. And we may want very much to sell our home and move to a different location. If you do, we may very much want to switch jobs. We may want to be more fulfilled in life. We may want a different relationship. We may want a healthier physical body. And yet we block ourselves. It comes down to fear of change. So do you fear change? And if you do, how much? I just want to invite you to be completely 100% honest with yourself today. Okay, that was the question. You know the answer in your own life. And let's all be honest. Reinventing yourself can, in fact, be terrifying. Yes, it can be exhilarating, but there are moments, and I had, in my own experience, plenty of moments. I knew when we were going to sell our house in 2017 that it was going to be an uncomfortable process of change for me. Why? Because I'd gotten attached. And there's no point in getting attached to a physical dwelling when you could turn out to be a much different person on the other end. Stronger, with a clearer sense of purpose, much clearer, more confident, and simply braver in every respect. That is part of the experience that I have gained over the last 2.5 years. And many of you following us on social media, many of you listening to this show right now, may want radical change yourself. And people often say, well, I don't know how to get it. How do I do that? How do I move past all of this? Because I'm entertaining all of these questions, and it freaks me out a little bit. Well, what I would say, and this is something that I tell people that I work with, whether they're a client or in coaching situations, is it's okay to be afraid. That's actually very natural. It's natural to experience trepidation or butterflies. Hopefully it's not massive panic for you, as I realize there are gradations of fear. But fear is fear, and the question is, what do you do with it? And here are some of the things that people have told me over the years, and indeed that I've asked myself, is at the start of a season, if you've decided to change, if you've decided to transform, like the show title, if you've made that decision, you're likely to have millions of questions turned up in your mind. And they could, if unchecked and unnoticed, lead to anxiety, stress, worry. But here are some of the example questions. And we commonly ask ourselves, okay, well, what is this going to look like? What's this new season going to look like? I mean, really, what's it going to be like to move to Arizona, where we've never lived? Well, it's going to be sunny. I can tell you that. How long will this season last? Well, people often ask that question. I wonder myself, but I'm not going to use that as an excuse not to do it, right? People wonder about that. And another valuable question people ask, okay, well, what do I need to learn in this? I mean, what experiences am I supposed to be having here? And will we enjoy it? I don't know. Will we enjoy it? Yes, in our case, yes. But people commonly ask this question. Will we be prosperous? Will we enjoy it? Will we live in abundance? Will we feel abundant? Will we prosper? And are we even doing the right thing in the first place? Are we even doing the right thing in the first place by jumping and moving? These are questions that people commonly ask. And what I would say, you can't block these questions from coming up. They're coming up for a reason. But what I would invite people to do is not dwell on them. Because if you dwell on questions like, are we even doing the right thing anyway, you may, especially if you're prone to anxiety, that's the word I'm looking for. If you're prone to anxiety, to ask yourself, gosh, am I even doing the right thing in the first place? Well, that could lead you down a rabbit hole of stress and worry and discomfort that you may not need. In fact, chances are you don't need that in your life. So that being the case, let's take a few minutes and talk about what you can do when you feel this fear arising. When you start to ask yourself questions like, are we going to enjoy this? Am I even doing the right thing? How long does this last? What's this going to look like? I just don't know. I just don't know. Right? If you catch yourself doing that, how do you move beyond the anxiety? How do you move beyond the sense of fear in order to make the best of this new season and to get the most out of it? And what I've done here is I've identified 5 things that will help you. They will help you, and I encourage you, if you're in a transitional state right now, or if you are contemplating this, cultivate these energies. There are 5 of them. We'll talk about them in specific detail here. Number 1 is stay curious. In fact, that could serve as the theme of this entire show today, is stay curious. And this is something that I feel very strongly about. Without being curious about what's out there or what's possible, it's very difficult to allow yourself to stretch your comfort zone, isn't it? It's very difficult to allow yourself, metaphorically speaking, to get off the couch and get out the door. Understand this doesn't necessarily have to involve a physical move, but stay curious. I saw a television commercial years ago on public broadcasting that was talking about reading, and at the end of the commercial it said, stay curious. And I love that. That's what we need to do as human beings, is to stay curious and cultivate an attitude of curiosity and adventure, and ask yourself what's possible, what's out there, what am I missing, right? What am I missing by staying put? Back to the metaphor of the couch, right? That example. What am I doing by staying plastered to the couch in my living room, watching television, when I could be out doing something else? Okay. Right? What am I missing out on? And remember, earlier in the broadcast, when we talked about what the tipping point was, the tipping point for me was a pain point where, continuing with the example of the couch, I got sick of it and very uncomfortable. Now, I don't wish extreme discomfort on any of you, but for many of us as human beings, we're stubborn, right? Myself included. I'll admit that. I think we can all admit that. If you have a stubborn streak and you know who you are, we get in our own way that way. And I got in my own way for many years by just refusing to allow the change that wanted to express itself. And it's about allowing it. So cultivate that curious attitude. Stay curious. That's item number 1. And item number 2 is cultivate a tolerance for taking calculated risks. Because if we don't take any risks at all, then what happens is we stay the same. And why do people seek change in the first place? Well, it's because our comfort zone becomes not so comfortable. It becomes a constraint. And as we grow, our old comfort zone begins to hem in on us like clothing that's too tight and needs to be exchanged for something larger. I think of the example of a growing child. They outgrow their shoes every 15 minutes. They outgrow their pants. They need new shirts. They grow super rapidly. And we can do that too as human beings, is grow and grow. And what happens when your comfort zone becomes too strained is you start experiencing the pain. And you have to, and I had to do this, weigh the cost of staying the same versus the discomfort of trading out an old pattern for a new one. And as it turned out, it was temporary, short-term discomfort. In fact, we create way too much worry and stress for ourselves as human beings as it is. Most of the things that we worry about never happen anyway. They never come to pass. And we spend all of our time worrying about what could happen, and then it never happens. And if it doesn't happen, then how do we feel about that? Well, hopefully you don't circulate back into a cycle of guilt. But taking calculated risks, and by calculated, what I mean is you don't have to take a flying leap off a cliff. You don't have to sell your house and move to a foreign country. You don't have to do that, right? But taking calculated risks, meaning you've thought about it, and you're going to do it anyway because the pain of staying the same is more than the short-term discomfort. So it's a matter of weighing that. So take calculated risks. We're going to cut to a commercial break right here, and when we come back, we'll continue looking at things to cultivate to move beyond fear and get the most out of any season. Stick with us. You're listening to Decide to Transform on Times Radio.
Free your mind with Times Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Hi, I'm Tomas Garza, host of Decide to Transform on Times Radio. Thank you for listening. You know, there's only so much we can cover on a 1-hour show. If you'd like to hear further from me, I happily offer personalized teachings. Get your very own voice recording or book a one-on-one consultation. Ask a burning question and gain clarity on achieving massive transformation in your life. Details available on my website, tomasgarza.com.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Times Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
I'm Fidel Nshambo. I was born in a city called the Bukavu in the Congo. We were a loving family, and then, boom, everything that I had disappeared in a single day. People think that when you are a refugee and they resettle you to America, and all your problems are done. They don't understand that that's the beginning of everything. I was not born a refugee. I was made one.
It's time we welcome refugee families with open arms. Learn more at embracerefugees.org, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Decide to Transform. I'm your host, Tomas Garza, and you are listening to Om Times Radio. Thank you so much for joining me live, and if you catch the recording anywhere you listen to podcasts, thank you for tuning in. I very much appreciate it. This is, as you may know, our first show from Phoenix, Arizona, our new home, in fact, and we're talking about the beginning of something, seasons in our lives. Now, before the break, we were looking at things that people can do, practical items that you can do to help you move beyond the fear of change. It's a fear that's common to all of us. It makes us nervous, even if it's just a little bit nervous. On some level, change doesn't sit well with some of us at all. And there are many things that we can do to, even if it's gradually and incrementally, move beyond that and take small steps. And that is really what it's all about. This is all a process. Personal transformation, for most of us, let's just be honest, is not accomplished in a single blinding flash. We don't just get to snap our fingers and be completely enlightened. Now, that would be nice. If we could do that, all of us, we might have done that already. But since we can't, let's take some of these practical tidbits and apply them to our lives. Before the break, we looked at two of them, and one was stay curious, cultivate an adventurous and curious attitude. The second was cultivate the ability and the tolerance, the willingness, I should say, for taking calculated risks. Not foolhardy, reckless risks, but calculated risks, because there is most certainly a difference. So there are 5 of these. Let's continue, and also during this segment, we'll get a very interesting question from one of the listeners. So we'll get to that in a moment. Number 3, thing to cultivate, to move beyond fear, have fun. Have fun. As adults, we tend to neglect fun in our lives to our own detriment, to our own stress, and we carry that stress around in our physical body. We may put on weight. We may have a heart condition. We may become ill. We may have pains and aches. And stress does so much damage to us, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Have fun. And allow. It's about allowing again. Taking calculated risks is about allowing. Having fun is about giving yourself permission to laugh. It's great medicine, maybe the best. Give yourself permission to be silly. You don't have to, and in fact it's really hard to be on all the time, to be serious all the time. That's why we see so many people whom we consider spiritual laughing. Right? They're laughing because they realize the importance of that medicine, and they're laughing because they realize how ridiculous perhaps they had been to not heed their own advice. Right? Have fun. Number 4, trust your intuition, trust your instinct. In other words, trust your gut. Very important in any walk of life, especially in a transition, because new experiences are going to come up, right? That's what you want. It's what you're calling in, new experiences. Some of these may look unpleasant. They may seem at best unfamiliar. Some of them are going to be great, of course, but trust your instinct and intuition. That's very, very important. Item number 5 here on our list of things to cultivate to help you move beyond fear and get the most out of any season in your life. This one is a little bit more complicated for a lot of people. It doesn't have to be, but it turns out to be. And this is release what needs to be released and trust the process, with the emphasis on trust the process. I want to speak to this one in a little bit more detail because this challenges so many of us. We realize and we agree with people who say it's a marathon, not a sprint, especially personal transformation. Yes, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. It's not accomplished in 10 seconds. It's not the 100-meter dash. It's not like that. It is a series of experiences and lessons that we have to learn, why we have to go through this in order to elevate ourselves, to transform and be able to serve others in the way that we want to do that. It's a process, so we have to trust the process. We have to trust that the universe has our back. And we also need to release what needs to be released. Very important. Forgiveness is very important, if you wish to call it that, releasing painful experiences, because we don't have to continue to go through them once we've learned from them. And what happens is often that when we commit, when we make a decision and commit to a process of growth and a process of change, what happens to many of us is all of a sudden a lot of seemingly bad or really difficult things will come up for us. We will be challenged, and some of us can expect this. Everybody's transition is different, which leads us into the second of our listener questions for today, and this one's great. And we're going to take our time here and break this one down, because there are a lot of layers to this. And this question is from Susan from Baltimore. Susan, thank you so much for sending this question in. Incidentally, I welcome questions from you, the listeners, on the show. I'll tell you about how to get hold of me for that in a few minutes. But Susan, let's go over your question here, and I hope you're listening live. Susan writes, I went into a move, a physical move, feeling excited and that this was really the right thing to do for me. And once I did it, everything just began to fall apart. It's hard to stay patient. And what are your thoughts? Okay, Susan, thank you for that. I know a lot of people can relate. Anytime someone asks a question on the show, there are probably hundreds or thousands of people worldwide that say, oh yeah, I want to know about that too. So Susan, thank you for doing that. Going into a physical move feeling excited can be a really wonderful thing. Cindy and I have gone into our move to Arizona, to use ourselves as an example, very excited. Excited to be in the sun, excited to go hiking in the desert, in the mountains, excited to use our pool in the backyard, which incidentally is not heated and it's a little cold right now, but it will warm up, of course. So we're excited about all of this, and we feel that it's really the right thing to do. I will share that we had a nightmare closing the deal on this house. And we had a bona fide real estate nightmare dealing with people who, frankly, were hard to work with. And I'll spare you all of the details on that. If you've gone through a difficult real estate transaction, they can be that way. Some are smooth, some are not. This one was not, and we had at the end of last week, just last week, a significant amount of stress in order to fly in from Mexico, close the house purchase, and start our new lives. It's not always smooth. And when you come up on a new season, things will come up. Things come up for you to release them. You may have been carrying around emotionally, psychologically, that manifest in the form of a difficult transaction. For example, they could manifest in the form of something in your new home not working, for example, and then people have to cultivate the patience to work with that and trust the process. And yes, Susan, it's hard to stay patient. It's not something that comes naturally to a lot of us, is it? And even when we like to think of ourselves as patient people, we have our moments. And part of what really occurs to me in any process of growth and change and starting a new season is we've got to give ourselves permission to be imperfect. Right? We can't always be on. We can't always be at the top of our game. It would be wonderful if we could, but that's not the way our lives work. And we have to have moments where these stressful things come up, and it's about the long-term perspective and continuing to trust yourself and to trust that you've made this move for a reason, indeed for many reasons, and perhaps all of these things that are coming up right now are just short-term hiccups with a lesson, even a painful lesson, to teach you, for you to move through so that you can then go about the rest of your time in this new location feeling better about it, feeling like you're more on purpose, more empowered, like you're doing the right thing, and really feeling that viscerally instead of just thinking it. And it's trusting the process and that the universe has your back, that it's going to deliver to you the people and the situations that you need. All of it in the long run. All of it in the long run, because the timing is not what we all want it to be. And our modern conveniences like the internet, like Twitter, Facebook, social media, leads us to, if we're not careful, be even more impatient than we already are, right? And some of you may think, well, I'm a patient person, but we all have our moments of impatience. I like to think of myself as a patient person. I am a meditation instructor, right? I'm a healer. I am an author, and all of those require patience. However, what happens is we all have our moments, and we certainly had our moment trying to get this closing done well, it's actually the people from the title company. God bless them. I love them. Thank you so much. First American Title in Mesa, Arizona, for staying late, because we almost didn't have the keys to this place. They stayed after 5 p.m. on Friday to help us get the deal done, and that's literally how harrowingly last minute it is. Very little else to say about the details of that, because that could occupy an entire chapter of a book. But things are not always smooth, and they haven't always been smooth for us. If you're considering a transition, whether it's a physical move, whether it is a change in relationship status, whether it's a physical exercise related topic or a health related topic, jobs, you name it, whatever it is for you, once you make the decision to change and commit to that change, things will come up for you. And it's all a question of trusting the process and understanding that you've undertaken this journey, this period of time in your life for a reason. And that may or may not be immediately apparent to you. So Susan, thank you so much for submitting this question. So listeners in general, I love to hear from you, and I want to thank all of you for all of the feedback that you've given me on social media, via email. I really love to hear from you, and I love to read your questions over the air. It's beneficial on so many levels. Not only do you get some answers, you get to also share with people worldwide, because this is live worldwide broadcast. There are people out there in the world, many people, who have the same questions as you do, and you're expanding your reach, you're expanding your own love and your own sense of helpfulness to many people. It's a great thing to do. Here's how you do it. You can always send me an email, and that email is tomas@tomasgarza.com. Now, this is Tomas, Tomas. There is no H in there. This is the Spanish variety. So tomas@tomasgarza.com. Send me an email with your questions, and I'm happy to read them over the air. These can be specifically related to the topic of the show, or they can be general in nature. So any questions or things that are troubling you, if you have a burning question about your own transformation in life, about growth, about change, about spirituality, for that matter, if you have those types of questions, I'm happy to help, and I'm more than willing to read this to a worldwide audience. So email is one way. If we are connected on social media, please send me a message on Facebook Messenger. And that's great. I absolutely welcome the questions, and I love to hear from you. So I want to close with a couple of thoughts today, and one question for you is, how are you going to stretch your comfort zone? How are you going to stretch your comfort zone today, this afternoon, this week? Because there may be a new chapter waiting for you. And if you know there is, will you embrace it? We'll see you next week on Decide to Transform. Have a great week, everybody.